Hello and welcome to today's event, Nutanix-on-Nutanix Data Consolidation in Action. Today's event is brought to you by Nutanix and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is David Davis and I'm excited to be the moderator for today's event. This event is the second part of the 5-part Nutanix webinar series entitled Better Together. The first event was entitled Journey to the Private Cloud, Understanding the Critical Criteria for Private Cloud. If you attended that event live, awesome. Kudos to you. If you registered for the event series after that event, you should have received a link to a video recording of that event for you to watch at your leisure. On this second event in the series, you'll learn how Nutanix IT uses software-defined storage for simplicity and flexibility. The third event being how Nutanix helps you calm choppy IT operations on February 13th. And then on the fourth event on March 5th, you'll learn how Nutanix Private Cloud enables business continuity and disaster recovery. And the final event on March 19th, why security can no longer be an afterthought. My name is David Davis, and I'm excited to be your moderator for this event. Now, you should know that we want this to be an educational event and event series, so we encourage you to use the questions box there on the control panel to ask all of your questions related to private cloud and the Nutanix solution. We'll be standing by to answer all of your questions, and we also encourage you to download the handout that's available there in your event console. Now, through the event series, we also have a number of prizes. Anyone who attends at least one of the events in the series will receive a $5 Tango gift card. Tango gift cards can be used at many online and on-premises retailers such as Starbucks, Best Buy, Apple, and more. And to clarify, you'll receive one gift card for attending at least one event in the series, but not multiple gift cards for attending multiple events. On this second event and the fifth event, we will be announcing the prize winners of our two grand prizes. They are Apple MacBook Pro laptops. That's right, I said it. We're giving away two MacBook Pros. They are grand prize number one, the brand new 16-inch MacBook Pro, and that will be announced on the January 28th event. That's right, that's today. And then the final event on March 19th. Now, you can increase your chances of winning a MacBook Pro because for every event that you attend in the series, you'll receive one more entry for these grand prize drawings. So make sure that you attend as many events as possible in this 5-part series to increase your chances of winning. You must be present on the live event to be eligible for the prize drawings. Winners have the option to make a donation to a selected charity. We would love to help you do that if you should win a prize. And all grand prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. Full prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. And with that, I'm excited to introduce you to today's presenters. They are Mr. Devin Helms, Marketing Strategist at Nutanix, Mr. David Ta, Director of IT Systems Engineering at Nutanix, and Mr. Mike McGee, Technical Marketing Engineer, also at Nutanix. I'll hand it over to our first presenter. Take it away, Devin.
Hi, this is Devin Helms from Nutanix, and I'm really excited to talk to you all today about how we, a major unicorn in the technology space, leverage our own revolutionary technology to power our business. In a moment, I'll introduce our own David Ta, Director of IT at Nutanix, and Mike McGee, who leads technical marketing for our storage stack, to help illustrate this better. But first, let me take a moment and set the stage. So if you're on this call, you're probably already feeling the pressure of the rapidly increasing number of applications, users, devices, and use cases in your environment. And we at Nutanix were experiencing this as well. In fact, IDC expects a 5-fold increase in the next 5 years of data created by this ever-expanding list of sources. When you peel back the layers, you can see that the unstructured data will be responsible for the lion's share of this data growth, accounting for as much as 80% of all the data in your environment. Now, of course, growth is nothing new. When it comes to considering the storage challenge, the limitations of legacy infrastructure are a major impediment. Massive data growth results in massive complexity when administrators have to deal with islands and silos of storage that aren't integrated and don't support large-scale automation. When those silos require specialized tools to manage, and when management and break-fix activities take up about 80% of the administrator's time, that can be a significant problem to being able to deploy at scale. And this is when massive growth results in massive complexity. A lack of visibility and control is another challenge with legacy infrastructure. Native tools are only focused on the local silos of storage and can only give the most basic information. Administrators are put in an unscalable situation when they either have to go and collect all of that log data from each silo or implement third-party tools to control all of that massive data footprint. And finally, as organizations begin to adopt cloud for their strategy, legacy infrastructure, which is built on heavy metal on-prem era technologies, can't accommodate the pay-as-you-grow model, software-defined feature delivery, and when updates result in downtime and loss of productivity. And so in this sense, legacy infrastructure is built for that on-prem era rather than the new cloud era. Now, when you talk to a lot of IT organizations out there, most organizations will tell you that the ideal solution to this problem is to deploy a hybrid cloud model. But what's interesting is many organizations have yet to do so. And the reason is that the process and architecture is just too complex with legacy infrastructure. So Nutanix helps to solve this with a private cloud infrastructure that's easy to deploy, provides flexible scale, and management simplicity. And of course, what is key is the distributed storage fabric, which we'll be talking about today. So our distributed storage fabric, also known as the DSF, brings modern capabilities to help deal with these challenges. First, it's designed for simplicity at scale. It's built from the ground up with integration with the broader infrastructure, both from an architectural perspective and from a management perspective. So there's no steep learning curve. In fact, VM owners, application owners, and even IT generalists can handle many management and provisioning tasks on their own. And deep automation, including self-tuning and self-healing, help to keep the lights on in a low-touch manner, freeing your administrators from more valuable tasks. Because governance and control are so important, we include deep insights about the data that you're storing and out-of-the-box analytics to help you audit and control access and spot anomalies in data access patterns. And finally, Nutanix's distributed storage architecture is built for multi-cloud world and pay-as-you-grow licensing models. The ability to run many different hardware platforms gives you flexibility and choice when it comes to selecting your hardware that underlies the architecture. And because it's software-defined, features can be updated and deployed in a non-disruptive manner on an as-needed basis. This can happen without disrupting the hosted workloads. The Nutanix Distributed Storage Platform deploys as part of the Nutanix AOS infrastructure, and it deploys as virtual controllers which provide access to the underlying resources in the cluster. Resources from the same Nutanix AOS cluster platform are available from those controllers, giving you access to the entire cluster in a shared manner. From that same AOS platform, you can deploy file, block, object, and VM storage, giving you great flexibility to be able to support the storage you need when the needs come up. This allows for storage also to live right alongside your applications, which results in easier management and better performance of your infrastructure. And because we're a software-defined platform, Nutanix delivers a wealth of shared storage fabric features that you'd expect from any enterprise-level storage system. Nutanix Distributed Storage Fabric allows for tuning of storage performance on the fly with automated scale-up and scale-out capabilities. And all scale activities are always conducted non-disruptively. The Nutanix DSF provides an innovative monitoring and automation engine that tracks performance of workloads and identifies issues before they become problems. It provides administrators the best possible response to the potential issue, and with just one click from the administrator approving the remediation, it takes care of action and resolution to resolve the issue before it becomes a significant problem in your environment. Native storage efficiency technologies include compression, deduplication, and space-efficient copying technologies, allowing for storage efficiency while also improving strong native data protection. And integration with solutions such as Mine and Xi provide even greater levels of availability for Nutanix storage infrastructure. And of course, Nutanix is best known for our operational simplicity, providing you a single-click deployment and management model and a single pane of glass for all of your management activities. So recently, IDC surveyed several Nutanix customers to understand the benefits that they were seeing by deploying Nutanix files, a part of the distributed storage fabric, into their environments. And we were thrilled to hear that our customers were seeing dramatic reduction in operational expenses and rapid payback. On average, our customers reported 414% ROI over 5 years and a 7-month payback period. At the same time, they were able to get a 66% reduction in total cost of operation over that same 5-year period, directly resulting from the elimination of break-fix tasks from self-healing and self-tuning capabilities of Nutanix Distributed Storage Fabric. And end users' experience was improving as well, with 99% reduction in unplanned downtime, again, due to the self-healing and self-tuning capabilities of Nutanix Files, all of which was achieved with 30% improvement in application performance, driven by efficiencies in architecture and having the application stored right alongside the storage. So Nutanix Files has been in the market for about 3 years and is already deployed at thousands of customers in both commercial and enterprise spaces. We're really excited that Nutanix Objects, our object storage solution that provides simplicity at massive scale, has now been available for about 6 months and is already being rapidly adopted for backup, archive, and next-gen cloud application use cases. And we expect to see similar benefits for our customers with Objects as with Files. But of course, nothing tells the story better than someone who's lived it. So I'm pleased to welcome David Todd, Director of IT, on the line, and Mike McGee from our Storage Technical Marketing team to discuss Nutanix's own adoption of the Nutanix Distributed Storage Fabric. Gentlemen?
All right, thank you, Devin. Yeah, hey everyone. This is Mike McGee with Nutanix Technical Marketing, and David and I, we both worked at Nutanix for quite a while. At this point, I've been here for over 5 years. David, how about yourself?
Yeah, I've been here. I think this is going to be my 6th year here.
Awesome. Yeah, so we've seen the evolution of Nutanix as a company, really from the startup stages all the way through to a public company and serving some of the largest customers in the world. And this evolution and growth has really impacted everything from our core product and how we do software, all the way through how we deliver our internal IT systems. So with this next part of the webinar, I wanted to focus on how we use our own products and how that has impacted what we do with our own internal IT here at Nutanix. Our CTO likes to call this drinking our own champagne. People like to call that eating your own dog food, et cetera. We like to call it drinking our own champagne. And specifically, I want to focus on Nutanix Files. So you can imagine, as a startup, a software company with just a few employees, there's likely going to be a lot of processes and procedures that aren't necessary in place for IT at the very beginning of a startup. And you can imagine software developers are going to be some of the first employees that come on board, and they're going to have a lot of responsibilities, including standing up different systems to really get the whole development life cycle going. So initially here, David, I wanted to get your thoughts on where Nutanix was going back 6+ years as a startup, and what were some of the considerations when managing that internal file system and file server estate.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. When I started, we had a bunch of file servers that were basically Linux boxes under people's desks. So as we matured as a company, we had to move towards enterprise-grade solutions in data centers. We started off with JBODs, running on bare metal hardware, running Linux operating systems. But as a company grew bigger, we had to move towards enterprise supported solutions. So we ended up choosing Windows Storage Server, running on Hyper-V on top of the Nutanix hyperconverged platform. And that didn't work out too well for us. There were rumors that we were creating a product called Files. And when Files was released, we started considering the migration over to Files. And we did that about 1.5 years ago. And it's been a true blessing.
No, excellent. And yeah, we'll definitely touch on some of the details of Nutanix Files and where the journey has taken you. But what were some of the use cases early on when it came to, what were the use cases for your SMB, your NFS, your network attached storage or NAS scenarios?
Yeah, the major consumers were our department file shares and repositories for engineering build artifacts. I would say the most critical file share that we had was the finance file shares, because at the end of every quarter, we needed these file shares to be available 100% of the time, as we're putting out our revenue numbers. So, that was actually a real pain point for us. And for some reason, I think you guys can relate to this. Our finance department, they do some interesting things. They had some really, really large Excel files. I would say, I remember they were anywhere from 100 megs to 500 megs, and they were working on these collaboratively. And we kept running into performance problems. We had to reboot the server plenty of times. Remember, this is Windows, right? So anytime there was a problem, we'd have to, we couldn't figure out why they couldn't access it, or it was taking too long, so we'd just keep rebooting the servers. And so it became like a quarterly thing when we knew that the quarter was coming, the end of quarter was coming, and finance was performing their quarter end busyness. We would be all on call and ready to reboot the Windows file server.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about just working just to keep the lights on. Yeah, that's not terribly strategic when you got to stand by and do those sorts of things, pager like activity. And I think you guys were also looking at systems that were tied to like the engineering build process as well, right?
Yes, yeah. So our build artifacts are pulled from filers and written to filers, and we use those build artifacts to create new builds. Our build tools, our tool chains, our gold images for testing, everything is depending on these file systems.
Yeah, and I remember early on when I first joined, and even today, testing new builds with new functionality to help with training material and documentation, always building and really pulling, those gold images, myself, the hypervisor ISOs, because we can transition between Hyper-V to ESX and AHV, even different platforms that might have new driver firmwares for your disks, for the BIOS, et cetera. So it's a really centralized core to the business as a software startup and development lifecycle. And then also for everyone that depends on that for, those flow through operations when it comes to documentation, training, presentations and whatnot. So really, really critical systems. And you were also dealing with multiple sites, right? Or at least multiple data centers as we grew?
Yeah. So let me clarify a little bit. The reason why we settled on Windows Storage Server was because we wanted support from Microsoft from end to end. So we ran it on our Hyper-V platform, which was also running on Nutanix HCI as the underlying infrastructure. So with Windows Storage Server running DFS for namespace, and we had that spread across multiple data centers, the only problem is that the failover didn't exactly work as we expected. In the event that we had issues with one server, it wouldn't necessarily fail over properly to the other server. So we had a HA kind of problem there.
No, understood. Yeah, hear that sometimes when it comes to DFS and DFSR, certainly. Yeah, so quite a few challenges, mixed technology, multiple data centers, different mission critical systems between, finance and engineering artifacts. So let's turn to talk a little bit about, what you deployed on the Nutanix side when you started looking at Nutanix files. So, we got a good feel of the use cases. Could you touch on kind of the after state, not only from a technology perspective, but maybe from some of the value that you saw?
Yeah. So we started off with the department file shares. We started slow. We moved all of our department file shares over to Nutanix files. And almost immediately, we saw benefits from accessibility from finance, right? So users stopped reporting problems, and we let it bake for a little bit, and users were reporting faster performance, like faster access times. So this was just kind of like their perception. We measured, and what we saw, like from a performance point of view, is we saw a 12% increased performance in writes and a 9% performance increase in reads. I think just the architecture of Nutanix files, how it deploys multiple file servers, that improved the reliability and accessibility immediately. So since we've deployed files about a year and a half ago, we haven't received any performance problems or any tickets related to the finance file shares.
And that's pretty amazing. So you're saying you're not end of quarter standing around waiting to do something or fix something.
Oh, no, exactly. And so after we moved the department file shares, let it bake, we're like, okay, this is working great. Then we started moving everything over from the engineering side, which is a lot heavier, right? So for example, our largest file server that we're running right now is about 250 terabytes with 22,000 concurrent connections.
Wow, that's incredible. And have you had to scale that over time at all? Was it always that size, the number of maybe physical nodes and the number of file server front ends associated with it, or have you had to scale that at some point?
Oh yeah, we're scaling it constantly. I was just talking to the team this morning, and we're adding to this particular cluster this week as well. So as the engineering environment grows, as our product list grows, as our build environment grows, we have to keep making sure that we have enough capacity and space for all of this. So that's one of the nice things about Nutanix. It's I kind of look at it as like Lego building blocks. You just keep adding more blocks as you need.
Exactly, and you can do it on demand as you really need to grow. To Devin's point earlier, adding a node online, expanding out the storage pool automatically, and just starting to consume that additional space. Now, from my position, talking with customers, I get asked all the time, how do you migrate, or what's the best way to migrate from existing systems? And we don't necessarily have to talk about best practices, but I'm sure folks are curious, how did you transition from some of these older systems? What was the overall process, and what tools did you use?
Yeah, so we used rsync primarily to move a lot of files over. For the Windows side, we used Robocopy, and that moved the files over to the Windows file shares. On the engineering side, we have a particularly unique use case. So the environment's constantly turning, and we're building new builds every day, hundreds of builds every day, and we only keep about 10 days worth of builds, or the last 10 builds if there hasn't been anything in the last 10 days, right? So what we did was we brought up the Nutanix files environment in parallel, and we let it sit next to our old environment, and our build process would write files to both places. And after about 10 days, the AFS side was caught up to the old storage server, and then we rsynced all the stuff that was 10 days or less, right? Does that make sense? So after that, everything was aligned, and then we cut everything over to the new environment.
Yeah, it does. I mean, sometimes it takes multiple methods depending on the use case. What's the acceptable amount of downtime for the end users, et cetera. So yeah, we hear all kinds of native operating system methods like Robocopy on the Windows side of the house. If you're dealing with like NT-ACLs for maintaining permissions and groups, et cetera. And then typically on the NFS side of the house with Linux, rsync being a native tool. And we also sometimes we'll work with third parties. We work with Peer Software as a partner, Tempo as a migration partner, and also Datadobi as third parties, right, to help simplify in some cases. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to go about it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking back to 10 years ago, bunch of jobs ago, and we were still using rsync back then too. So.
Yeah, it works. It's a lot of people are familiar with it. We're talking about a very mature industry, and it's certainly something that can be used, especially if you're very familiar with the environment, maybe comfortable with scripting, have done it in the past, et cetera, to your point around other jobs. So no, if it ain't broke, there's no reason to move on from it.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, so since you started talking about some of the benefits, I wanted to go back to the slide that Devin had showed before, and we can add some technical detail around what we do, even more specifically on the file side, when it comes to the underlying technologies that really drive these benefits. But just to touch on again, some of the benefits that you mentioned. So you said improvement in performance, just really out of the gate, right?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that Files does is it deploys something called file server VMs, FSVMs we call them. And depending on your environment and your workload, it will deploy a bunch of these, right? So these are, consider this, if you're relating this to traditional storage solutions, these would be considered like the head units. And so Files will split out connections between these file server VMs, and typically you deploy 3 to start off with, and you can add more as you grow your environment. So that right there provides resiliency, and there's performance benefits to it as well. And then, the other thing is Files was very simple to deploy. It's all integrated into Prism, so now we have a single pane of glass. We're able to go to Prism, manage our file servers, and also manage our hyperconverged infrastructure. So the simplicity is really beneficial. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and those are some of the big benefits we hear from customers. And moving from a Windows-based either scale-out file server, clustered instance, or even standalone Windows file servers, that's one of the biggest benefits we hear for Files, because in those general environments, you're building out things yourself, you're allocating, disks or virtual disks, you're creating file systems, maybe you're clustering that file system, you're presenting them to hosts, or in one way, shape, or form, you're installing the operating system, you're managing that operating system over time when it comes to patching, and even beyond that, you were dealing with potential problems with that deployment and having to reboot at the most inopportune times, dealing with the end user. So the simplicity is really such a key piece, because it's taking all those operations and standing up an HA multi-headed, clustered, one-click upgradable file server is anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes. And from going from zero to having that ready to go, start deploying shares, et cetera. So I find that pretty powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and another thing was removing that layer of abstraction from Hyper-V, because a lot of our problems did stem from running Hyper-V as well. We had a lot of trouble with that. So moving to Files, we no longer had to deal with the hypervisor layer, and that was a huge relief for the operators.
Yeah, absolutely. And then those that might not be familiar with Nutanix, we support multiple hypervisors at a core as a part of our, our core AOS platform, our AOS software. And really, Files is a consumer of the overall AOS platform, and being a file server specific solution and application, if you will, that simply rides on top of our core distributed storage fabric, like what Devin was alluding to, as well as our core AOS. So with Files, that can run on our native hypervisor, AHV, and that includes all the same capabilities, one-click tuning, et cetera, that you get with the file server solution as a layer on top of that. So really, we're subsuming and consuming much of the same services that anything else in your environment would, whether you're using our scale-out iSCSI software-defined storage solution in Nutanix volumes, or if you're using our S3 compliant object storage service, it's all really relying on the same underlying core AOS software, which again makes it simpler at the end of the day. You're not dealing with different solutions, different hypervisors, or different silos, if you will.
Yeah.
And I know how IT has grown. There's likely more security requirements, ISO requirements, when it comes to auditing, et cetera. So I don't know if you have any details on some of the benefits of how we have security, built into the system. If you're dealing with Files, if you're dealing with AHV, we start with the security development lifecycle. So we bake it into the software. It's hardened out of the gate, shipped from the factory, in a sense, as we apply the software. And we even have like self-remediating, when you talk about self-healing, security technical implementation guides, or STIGs, where if something deviates from our underlying baseline, we can actually revert it back. If someone opened up a port, whether it was something that was malicious or accidental, we have software under the covers that will automatically, heal that system and bring it back to that STIG compliance. So any regulatory requirements, auditing requirements, we really keep that in mind and try to bake that into our software.
Yeah, we're actually going through the ISO audits right now, ISO 27001, 27002. I don't recall anything relating to our files deployment or anything regarding that. We're required to create corrective action plans or CAPs for anything that doesn't meet the audit requirements. So yeah, running on Nutanix has been very helpful there as well.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and we have the core platform. A lot of the benefits we talk about. You have the file storage layer and the core AOS platform, but we're really focusing on files as something that can really differentiate and give you additional value above and beyond just storing data, right? We want to give you additional insights over what's going on with the system. We do that at the core platform. We have anomaly detection and machine learning, and we can give you optimized runways to when we think you might run out of either storage space or maybe compute. And we're bringing that level of intelligence also to Nutanix Files specifically in something we call file analytics. And just to give folks a little bit of background, this is where we take all the auditing information that you might have from Nutanix Files, or what we've been calling AFS, which Acropolis File Services, which was the original name when it shipped 3 years ago. So all the auditing, someone opened a file, deleted a file, changed permissions, renamed something, et cetera, all of that can be forwarded to an external server. We have an internal API to do that. And so we developed an analytics product that becomes a consumer of those APIs, of all those different operations, and starts to build intelligence above that. And so with analytics today, we give you really 3 core pieces of functionality. We give you an overall view of the system. We like to call that data about the data, really a dashboard to help you understand, what's the modified data files, how old is the estate, is it a year older or older, is it a month young, et cetera. Also, what's been contributing to the increase or decrease in storage in the system? Did someone add a bunch of zip files or ISOs, or maybe it's Windows-based documents like Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, et cetera, over a given time frame. Could be over the last week, the last month, the last year, et cetera. And because we're taking these audit trails and really these audit details in real time as they occur against the system, we within analytics give you a completely searchable audit trail. So you can dig into what's been going on from a file perspective to the users and their activity, or you can look at a user and find out what files and folders and their activity have been going on from that direction as well. And further, we have anomaly detection built in, where if there's a group of these operations that you'd like to monitor, did someone delete a bunch of files, was there a mass permission, denied event, et cetera, you can build out alerts to let you know that you've crossed a given threshold, X number of operations occurred on the system as a whole, or maybe from an individual user. So you can find out, maybe I need to remediate something, maybe there's some malware on someone's system, or maybe someone's doing something accidentally for the purpose of permissions minimization, et cetera. So I'm curious from your perspective, David, with internal IP, have you been able to leverage analytics? I mean, it's included with files, regardless of the license. Have you been able to have a use case or leverage this in production?
Yeah, funny you say that. We actually just deployed it about 6 months back, and we deployed it particularly for troubleshooting. So we ran into this issue where our Jenkins slaves were timing out on the mount points, and so we have hundreds of Jenkins slaves that's mounting these files exports, and we weren't sure what was really happening. So we deployed file analytics to get a baseline and to identify abnormal behavior. And what we were able to figure out was that our environment wasn't sized correctly. We were running into problems between the hot tier and cold tier transfer, and our hot tier wasn't big enough to support it. So it gave us insights into our typical usage patterns, and we were able to track down the problems that way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to understand, what's going on with the system and make intelligent decisions about it. And then having a system that's flexible enough to where you can remediate it on the fly, maybe adding more nodes that have more SSD tier, et cetera. So no, that's a fantastic use case. And speaking of use cases, as we start to close out, I know there's additional functionality that we're adding to files. We're adding, tiering to compliant S3 storage targets, tiering to the cloud, et cetera. And we're also adding capability to do more granular replication between sites, which I think you guys are looking at and might implement in the not too distant future. Is that the case?
Yes, we're actually doing the pre-GA release, and we're testing it to ship snapshots between our different data centers right now.
Yeah, and this is I'm sure it's not only a huge benefit to you, but if you think about the development lifecycle of a product, having an internal consumer, obviously we have quality assurance and testing and development and all the different organizations within Nutanix that will touch a release like support or others before it goes GA. But having an internal consumer with live systems, real data, doing real use cases to be able to leverage our software out of the gate, even before it goes GA as a part of pre-release testing, maybe beta testing or even alpha testing, depending if it's a production system or a test system, is huge. It gives us real-world examples of the way it's going to be implemented, and it's going to help find bugs, find problems, refine the product, usability, serviceability over time. So that kind of symbiotic relationship between an internal consumer and development, and even someone in my role, I think is massive. I think it's a huge benefit to the overall state of the product.
Yes, here in IT, we actually follow the standard customer support model. So we treat ourselves as a customer in Nutanix. So when we run into issues, we call up our support team. They will file engineering tickets if needed. They will help us troubleshoot the environment. We do behave as a customer.
No, that's fantastic. It's great to hear. And how has by the way, how has your experience with our supporters been? We tout that we have an NPS of 90 plus over the last 5 years, which is really unheard of in our industry. Curious from an internal consumer, how have you found that working with our services and support teams?
Oh, phenomenal. Actually, so my friends in the industry as well, when I talk to them and ask them how their Nutanix deployments are going, first thing they talk about is how great our support team is.
Nope, that's what we hear consistently, and no, it's good. It's good you're treated well as an internal customer as well. All right, well, yeah. David, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Some real world examples of how we're using systems like Nutanix files within internal IT. So Devin, I'll throw it back to you for anything further. Any last words?
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks, Mike. Great update on the way we're using our own champagne, drinking our own champagne as it is. And thanks a lot for the information today. One thing I'd like to just remind everybody, there's probably a number of Nutanix customers on the line and watching this webinar. And if you are, one thing you want to keep in mind is the distributed storage fabric. This deploys in the environment you have today. And if you're a Nutanix customer already, you're actually entitled to a free terabyte of Nutanix files or 2 free terabytes of Nutanix objects, which, like I said, can deploy on the capacity you already have. So you could try this out in your environment today. So with that, David Taw, Mike McGee, thanks very much for joining me today. And thanks everybody for joining the call. Have a great day.
All right, excellent presentation there from Devin, from Mike, and from David. Really appreciate all the insight into how Nutanix is using Nutanix files to run Nutanix as a company. So really insightful there. We appreciate that. If you are attending this webinar series for the first time and meet the prize terms and conditions, we'll be contacting you with your Tango gift card. If you already attended the first webinar in the series, just keep in mind we're only giving out 1 Tango gift card for each attendance. But now it is time to award the first of the 2 grand prizes in the Nutanix webinar event series. So we have a brand new MacBook 16-inch Pro laptop. I wish I had one of these. The winner for this one is Kristen Rother from Tennessee. Congratulations, Kristen Rother from Tennessee. We'll reach out to you to deliver your grand prize. And if you weren't one of the prize winners today, keep in mind that we've got another grand prize coming up at the end of the event series. Again, this is a 5-part event series. This is the second of 5 parts. Because you registered for this event, you will receive invitations to the other upcoming events. So we hope to see you on those events. And keep in mind, every event you attend gives you another prize entry for that final grand prize. Again, thank you everyone for joining today's event. Don't forget to download the handouts that are there in the events handout tab, and also visit Nutanix.com for more information on the Nutanix file solution and how you can consolidate your data. Have a great day.